Nice to see everyone. I'll call the meeting to order. It's 6:02. Up first, we have our consent agenda, which includes the prior minutes from October 20th, as well as a number of policy reading. Any discussion on any of the consent agenda? Okay, I'll make a motion then to accept the consent agenda. We'll do that by roll. Sarah?
Aye.
Akua?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting? Do we have a need for any executive sessions?
No executives
No
tonight, and
okay.
I don't need to change anything.
Okay, great. So that brings us to our public comment window. I know we have one visitor here and one virtually. Did you ask Jared if he would like to speak?
I can't chat privately, so no, I did not yet.
Jared, are you able to hear me? Are you interested in addressing the board? He's muted.
Not tonight, thanks, he said.
Okay, great. And Douglas, are you here to just observe? Not
Just observe.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so then that moves on. We'll move on to our spotlights. We have 2 tonight, and we'll start with Callie.
Good.
Nice to see you.
You too. Let me make my slides. So I'm Callie Goss. I'm the district SEL coordinator. So my spotlight tonight is about how we monitor social emotional growth in our district, and I'll share some recent assessment data related to social and emotional skills. So to start, here's a recap of our board goal that was revised last year. So by June of 2027, each student will demonstrate growth in the core skills of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making over an academic year. In parentheses, you'll see core skills. That's the language we use in our district because of the program that we use for instruction called Wayfinder. Now, the core skills, so self-awareness, agency, adaptability, words like that can kind of get jargony. Courtney, you can go to the next one.
Not working. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. They can get kind of jargony and abstract, so I think it's more helpful to think about these skills in terms of the specific behaviors people exhibit when they have or show mastery of these skills. So for example, people who demonstrate self-awareness are able to recognize when they're being influenced by other people. People who are adaptable are good at not letting others' negative emotions impact them or changing what they do when something doesn't work. People who show empathy not only notice when other people aren't happy, but they take time and they actively seek out ways to understand other people. When you collaborate, it's not only about working with others to solve problems, but it's also the ability to receive constructive feedback when you're in a group. When you show agency, you can find resources to help you with your goals. And when you have a sense of purpose, you express gratitude and you choose and seek actions that lead to change beyond yourself. So when I reference these core skills and show data that matches up with them, think about these skills in terms of those specific behaviors, because those, in terms of outcomes for students and adults, since all of us are continuing to work on these skills, those are really inarguable. Like we all want those for our children. We all seek to demonstrate them ourselves with our families in the workplace, etc. So here's an example of what these skills or lack thereof could look like in a classroom today. And I would venture to say that some version of this scenario happens or has happened at some point in the last year in our schools. So I'll give you a chance to read it. So the gist of the scenario is students are in a group work situation, or they have some type of group work assignment. Jamie, sorry, I should have changed the name. Sorry, Jamie. There's no likeness. She immediately takes control, grabs materials, shuts down other group members when they try to interject. After a reminder for the teacher that seems to escalate the problem, she says their ideas don't make sense, and then gives up collaborating. So looking at those core skills on the bottom, it's usually never a clear cut, like this is a growth area, but you can tell that there's a primary skill that's missing here. And there are also other contributing skills that led to this behavior. So just in your head, answer for a second, what's the skill that's most applicable to the situation? So have that in your head. We'll come back to it in a second. So you've seen this before. Last year when I visited with a social emotional update, we talked about how measuring social skills differs from measuring academic skills. So when you're talking about a math skill or decoding and solving words and reading, that's a skill that once you learn it, you can apply it in any book, in any class, in any situation. When you demonstrate it, teachers are in general consensus, like, can this kid read? Do they know these vowel patterns? Social skills are different, so measuring them has to be different. So if you think about the skill of assertiveness, students may be able to explain what assertiveness means, but the ability to apply it could be really different from their cognitive understanding. And it's not always, it doesn't always make sense to apply a skill like assertiveness, because you have to have a nuanced understanding of when should I be assertive, when should I not, and that continues into adulthood. So it's not as easy as, like, is this student proficient in empathy, score 1 through 4. Instead, we have to monitor these 3 buckets. So first, are we teaching what we say we're teaching? Are our environments in schools conducive to learning these skills? And finally, do students show evidence of these skills in the classroom? So today, in the data that I'm going to share with you, it's mostly focused on that 3rd bucket. So social emotional skills and competencies. To what extent do our students and staff have these social and emotional skills to be successful? Those are just different sources. We do have assessment tools to monitor all 3, but the focus of tonight will be the 3rd. So because of the wording of our board goal, so that each student will demonstrate growth, the data I showed you, or will show you tonight, is our fall data for this year. It's important to note that because of how that goal is worded, we will be comparing fall data this year to spring data and asking what percentage of students showed growth in those 6 core skills. So notice that this is kind of baseline data for this year. In the spring, we'll use that to measure growth. And then next year, we'll use it as a comparison. So like next year, what percentage of students demonstrated growth in each skill? Here's a high-level snapshot. I'll give you a second to look at it on your own first. To give some context, the blue, so you'll see the 6 core skills on the bottom. The blue graph, or the blue bars, represent scores for students in grades kindergarten through 2nd. So those were teacher reported. So that's teacher input in students' mastery of these skills. The red bars represent student reported, and that's just the measure. So students self-report in grades 3 and up to, in regards to these 6 core skills, but teachers report for students in grades K to 2. So in general, you'll see that the first 2, self-awareness and adaptability, were our growth areas. Empathy, collaboration, and purpose were areas of strength for us. So the cool thing is that it doesn't stop there. Like, we don't just say, okay, we're good at this, we have to improve it. The curriculum tool that we're using, or the curriculum resource, is, so you know that it's called Wayfinder. It gives teachers the ability to sort students based on percentile. So teachers can go into the assessment results and look who were, or what students fell in the bottom 5% of our district in their grade band, who shows no concern, who is kind of on the edge and might benefit from some supplemental instruction. There's kind of a visual of the tiers. And here's what class reports look like. So this is what teachers will see on the back end, and they'll see distributions of every student and how they scored in each of those areas. Now, the next step, so how are we using this data? Today at leadership, principals were shown this protocol where they were led through with one example class. What is this class's top skill? What is their growth area? And here's where steps are taken that actually create impact. What do we do with this? So they are bringing this protocol back to their schools. A couple schools have already used it. And their teacher and counselor teams are asking, how do we want to take action? There are some low-level, super simple actions. It could be as easy as incorporating suggested activities, because Wayfinder says, like, for students lacking in a certain core skill, here are some suggested activities. Some more intensive responses in terms of like requirements of school personnel and just bandwidth. Developing and planning targeted groups to address needs. Wayfinder gives you the capability to group students who need instruction in a certain core skill together, and then use instructional resources to address that skill. Now, to circle back to the situation that we read about at the beginning, you probably noticed collaboration was the biggest growth area in this situation. Now, after we looked at Wayfinder data reports and teachers had the chance to see how their students measured up in those 6 core skills, the next step would be saying, okay, how are we going to intervene in a way that teaches Jamie a skill she needs, which is clearly collaboration would be the primary skill. Now, more and more, I think one thing that we should be really proud of is all of our schools are taking steps to go beyond just removing Jamie from the classroom and removing students or giving them time away. It might be a really logical consequence, but if that's the only thing you're doing, then Jamie will rarely develop the skills to join group work. So removing or having her take some time away needs to be paired with instruction and experiences that build the skills Jamie needs. So if you think about the question, how might you intervene to teach Jamie? Your gut response might say something like, well, we should tell her to stop saying that to her group members, or be kind when you're participating in group work. That gets toward an interaction, but still, one of the things that I think we should be proud of is more and more of our teachers and leaders are understanding that we have to get even more specific. So what behaviors will make Jamie more successful? Not just how we interact with her, but what can we teach her? And I highlighted some examples of some teaching points that Jamie might benefit from. And these are also, they also demonstrate how all of these 6 core skills are evolving over our lifetime, and even adults, I think, could use just practice and explicitness in things like, okay, I'm going to teach you some exit strategy language to identify when you need a minute and how to show that in a group. Or here's some language, Jamie, you could use to build on other people's ideas in a way that doesn't shut them down or harm relationships in your group. So this is the direction that we're going, and here's a sample intervention that could result from looking at our assessment results in after our fall waypoints administration window. And that is my spotlight. Thank you for listening.
You did a great job, Callie. I didn't get to see yours earlier today with the leaders, but I appreciate your work so much because you've been able to break this down to such a really specific level that it is actionable. And so now it isn't just that you're digging in to figure out where the behavior is coming from to get at that skill level. And I think that's positively impacting not only behavior, but I hope the board can see the connection to academic outcomes as well. Because the more we can keep kids in classrooms and have them functioning at higher levels, the better they will perform academically. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. I mean, these are skills that are absolutely critical for academic success and beyond, just for being a successful human in the world beyond school. It's excellent. Thanks so much, Callie. It's really, that was a great presentation. Much appreciated.
Thanks.
Okay, so next we have Gab.
I'm on the updating of Portrait of a Learner implementation. Go ahead and next slide. So we have a few focuses based on grade band. So each grade band is sort of focusing on something else as we work on this implementation. K-5 is working to identify existing strengths that they have in their instructional practices and make some connections with Portrait of a Learner. 6-8 is working on student-led conferences and specifically 2 indicators, reflect and learning goal setting, that connect to student-led conferences. And then 9 through 12 is working on proficiency-based learning, specifically instructional techniques. So last year we really focused on assessment, and this year we're really focusing on instruction. So for pre-K-5, there's time at leadership team for leaders to get, the K-5 leaders to get together and figure out protocols and, oh, it's interesting, it's missing a picture. So they're working currently, I think today, they worked on a protocol that they're going to bring back to their schools where teachers look at all the indicators and find examples of where those are already present in their instruction. And then Kelly Dean has been working during SU in-service both last year and this year with the Unified Arts teams around project-based learning and learning a little bit about how to implement that type of instruction in their settings. And then Richford Elementary School is developing some models as well. The middle school's focus is really on teaching 2 indicators, goal setting and reflect and learn, and completing the PLP elements. So this image up here is of the platform that we're using for our PLP. And in most schools are using Wayfinder in combination with whatever PLP time they have. It looks a little bit different in each school, but they're using Wayfinder instruction for instance, if they're working on values, they might do a lesson or an activity on values, and then they come to their PLP and do some reflecting on their values in their PLP. I think all schools had students create a slideshow or some sort of presentation for their student-led conference that kind of summed up these elements. So that just happened or is happening like this week. I think we still got 2 schools out doing student-led conferences. And we did a little reflecting on that today, and I think we'll come back to that again and see if there's any tweaks that we need to make for the spring student-led conference. We set some goals today around really focusing on reflecting and learning and goal setting and teaching those skills explicitly, and also potentially having students use data to sort of increase the ownership. That's one thing that came up while we were talking, is that when students could point to evidence, that it was much more meaningful for them. So really honing in on, could they use their data, could they look at their work and use that to more intentionally set goals and reflect on their learning. And then 9 through 12 has a lot of things going on. We worked heavily on pre-assessments at the very first in-service, and all teachers administered some sort of pre-assessment activity that was aimed at identifying where kids were on the scale for the particular indicator associated with a class. So there's an art example up here. So the art teacher is responsible for, I believe it's something about artistic technique. I don't have the exact words. And so the art teachers gave a pre-assessment to students, and then students were able to kind of see where they were on the scale starting very early on. And that was one thing that everybody did. Then they brought student work. Well, they didn't bring student work. I collected student work and brought it to SU in-service. And they worked on calibrating, and I think we talked about this on the last spotlight as well, around just the importance of having teachers get together, look at student work, and ensure that they are assessing it in the same way, looking at it in the same way, and adjusting their expectations based on those conversations. So that's going to be happening every SU in service for these folks. These guys are also working on student-led conferences and really ensuring that students are completing that PLP process and trying to make it as meaningful as possible. So there's some data on the PLPs, and I did not collect data on 9 through 12. The reason is that Richford is not using Richer Picture for their PLPs, and Enosburg is. So it's hard for me to tell the numbers in the same way, but both 9th and 10th graders in both schools are doing that. So that's what I pulled together. So grade 9, 88% PLP engagement. So that means that 88% of 9th graders in FNESU, both Richford and Enosburg, interacted with their PLP in some way. Most kids interacted with a lot of their PLP elements, but I didn't go down to the detail of like who did 5 elements, who did 4 elements. So if they interacted with their PLP at all, they're counted in this 88%. So 9th graders, 88%, and then 10th graders, 69% PLP engagement.
Can I just give context about PLP? PLP is a requirement of Act 77, I think it was 2013, so we've been working on personalized learning plans for a long time, and trying to hone it and make it more connected to the work that they're doing, and really connecting it to the evidence base eventually.
Yeah, it's been super hard, I think, to implement PLPs, not just in our district, across the state.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of problems implementing because it seems like something else. So we've done a lot of work to connect it to the indicators and to also incorporate student work and their courses and try to make those connections. It's a work in progress. Mm-hmm. 3 other things that are happening. The Flexible Pathways coordinators, both here and in Richford, are working together during SU in-service to create learning opportunities that are project-based and kind of teach kids how to do that kind of learning. I think that's one of the weaknesses that we have found, is that we want kids to engage in sort of the type of learning that we saw with the courtyard. But it's hard work, and it requires a lot of executive functioning, and kids really need to be taught those skills. So both Max and Chris have been working on ways to create smaller opportunities that are a little bit more structured, but allow kids to kind of learn those activities or those skills through those opportunities. So I think they're called studios in Enosburg. I'm not sure if they're the same in Richford, but that's a project that they've been working on together. And then the school counselors have been working on creating some sort of example pathways to make the system that we have a little more concrete for people. So that's what they've been working on during SU in-service. And then Expo is coming up in January. A lot of planning around that is happening. And then coming up in the spring, winter and spring. So first we've got Expo. Both schools having Expo in January. Spring student-led conferences. We have a middle school STEM fair that's cross-district happening that is related to portrait of learner indicators in the sense that they are doing sort of bigger, more multifaceted experiences. I think there's a lot of teacher professional learning happening with that group around sort of the type of learning that we're looking for. So that's pretty exciting. I think that's going to be a fun event. And then finally, we are part of a study in collaboration with ETS, which is the Educational Testing Service, who bought the Mastery Transcript Consortium and is affiliated with the Carnegie Foundation. And we sort of, we're collaborating with them on a study they're doing about how to assess the types of skills that are embedded in our portrait of a learner, things like collaboration and communication. Those are the two, collaboration and communication, that we are hoping to be able to experiment with. We have not gotten into their platform. We haven't had students get in there except to do the career assessment so far. So looking for opportunities to do that between now and spring. So that's that.
I know it's difficult to put together like where are we, because there's so many pieces going on. So I appreciate you bringing this to like a pretty simple terms, like how we've moved forward at each of those levels. I think it's a heavy lift, and there's a lot of work going on at all the levels.
Yes, there are.
Yeah. Thank you, Gab.
Thanks so much, Gab. Appreciate it. Okay, Morgan, you are up.
All right. And the only thing I have for you tonight is discussion of the FY27 budget. So we'll get right into it. Looking at the schedule, we are here at your third board meeting. Still on track, I hope, to finalize the budget at the middle of December. Just as a reminder, December 1st is when we start to get the information from the state that we need to project tax rates at your local district level. And each of your two district boards will have a meeting between December 1st and the next time you meet as a board here. So at that local level, you'll at least get a rough idea of where things may end up in terms of taxes. The board goals are in the slide deck that I shared with you, both at this level and at the district level. We like to just ground the budget discussions in that, as well as ground them in student enrollment trends. And what you have here is just looking at the two districts side by side. Overall, for the SU, we are still anticipating an enrollment increase. Right now, looks like it'll primarily be at the younger grades and at the NMV side. The budget consideration slide is one that we use in the town books at the district levels. We put this in here just to kind of keep you focused on where some of the big movement is for this budget. Compared to how you saw this last month, I think the most notable change is that we now know that the premium increase for health insurance has been proposed at 7.3%. That still needs to go through state approval, but it generally doesn't tend to change much. There's some data that we showed last month about what that increase has been over the last 8 or 9 years. 7.3 is double inflation, still a pretty sizable increase, but it's the first time we've seen a single-digit increase in a few years now, so it was slightly welcome news. Still tracking the potential cuts to federal funding. This is a bigger impact on your local budgets, as you know from those meetings that we've been moving staff in from federally funded grants into your local budget to protect them. At the SU level, we are watching changes to Medicaid. They're much harder to predict, but there is some fear out there about how changes to eligibility will impact certain funding streams. For this board, it's primarily Title I, the Medicaid money we use for after-school funding, and E-rate money, as well as the eligibility for food service programs. We touched on this last month, and we'll get into it a little bit more. We each year decide to use a certain amount of our unreserved fund balance, which is the money left over at the end of the prior year. I am bringing forward numbers suggesting that we take just a little over $800,000 of so-called leftover money and use that to reduce the assessment that goes out to the 2 districts. The census block grant is the big chunk of special education funding. This is the last year of increases due to the transition mechanism that was put into place. 4 years ago, we were on a reimbursement model where you get a certain amount of money based on what you spent. The money we get now is based on student population. We benefited from that change, but we didn't get the benefit all in 1 year. So another sizable increase this year, and this will be the last year that we benefit from that. Talked last month about food service and transportation being pulled into their own separate funds. And then at some point when we've finalized the budget, we will know how much the assessment has changed year over year. Right now, I'm expecting it'll be down for FY27. You saw these next 2 slides last month. In terms of proposed staffing changes for the central office staff, there's been no changes since October. Reduction in days per year for the early ed director, and then moving a coach in from Enosburg Richford, who previously had been working primarily with the high schools and is now serving all of your schools. For English language learners, a reduction of another 2 days a week in terms of FTE. This is a position we have not been able to fill, but based on what we're seeing for need, we felt okay reducing that to be hired position by 2 days. Yeah, there we go. A lot of changes to special ed from the last time you saw it, primarily around anticipated caseloads at the pre-K level. So now we're projecting overall an increase of just under 3 people for special ed. That will likely change again before you finalize this budget in December, and it will change multiple times after you finalize this budget. And that's just a function of the sort of mobile population and the fluid needs for those kiddos. And in food service, no change from last month and no change from last year, or I believe the year before. So in your packet, you have a report that looks like this that details all of the staff that make up your general fund budget and where they are based in terms of location and those kind of broad function levels. So I will pause there for a moment for any questions from the board on the proposed staffing changes, and also I think tee Lynn up for 2 other discussions around potential staffing moves for next year. So first, any questions on the board, from the board on the staffing changes?
I just would be, I'm curious about the drop in the number of teachers in special education.
Yep, some of that is kind of shared between BCBAs as well.
Okay.
So they're not all necessarily, not classroom teacher, but special ed teachers in the direct sense. We had one to-be-hired position at, I believe, Richford Elementary, which we were not able to fill, and based on what we're predicting next year, have decided not to include that in the budget. We are also increasing at the early ed level an additional teacher. So there's also a bit of a wash there. But it's primarily the folks that we had called BCBAs that you're seeing that looks like a reduction in teachers, because that's
Okay.
the category we have them in.
Gotcha. Okay.
We have a open application all the time and can't find the people,
Right.
so I was just giving up for a while.
And do you leave, Morgan, do you leave a buffer in the budget in case someone moves into the program and we have an increased need for either BCBAs or teachers?
We have a few BT positions that are in there that are anticipated and they're not necessarily tied to kids yet. We also have been keeping 4 SLP positions in the budget, which would be
Right.
great to have. We've never been able to get close to that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a
I
little
do
bit of a
wonder
buffer
if we're
there.
going to have a different experience this spring based on some of the cuts that some of the other higher spending districts. What I'm kind of seeing and hearing is that people are projecting they know as we shift to this foundation formula that they're going to have a steep drop. So I think that there are some systems that are considering making reductions in the next couple of years leading up to the foundation formula. So I do have that wonder in the back of my mind if some of the openings that we've had, if there may be a few more candidates out there looking in what we've had for the past year. So I'm going to just use that as a hope strategy.
That would be great. The other thing that's moving on special ed, you'll see we've increased by 7 BTEs, which are really staff we're taking out of the Idea B grant. It was a grant that we had trouble spending down in COVID, and so there was a balance there. That's the one that we're using for the alternative program. And we're getting to the point now where we're only spending current year money, number one. And number two, we have been hiring more kids, more adults to serve kids in that program. And so we're at the point now where we know that that Idea B grant isn't going to cover all of those staff.
So there have been 2 things that have come up that I want to just tip the board to. They're not well-shaped ideas yet, but I've been visiting all of the schools, and things that are consistently coming up is that we have struggles accessing data in a way that's really efficient and useful. So for teacher teams, it goes kind of all the way from the classroom level on up. So for teacher teams to be able to readily pull actionable data together without doing it in a tedious way that requires a ton of their time inputting data and organizing data and getting it together, they're struggling at that level. Leaders are struggling to be able to pull data into actionable formats to be able to one, respond to, and two, to be able to report out on. I will say from my vantage point, it is a struggle every time I try to get data to be able to disaggregate it out. So what I would love to be able to do is say, I have someone that can do this and I have a system that can do this. So if we say we need to see data for all of the students related to behavior across all of our schools, disaggregated by maybe it's gender, race, disability categories, any number of ways. Right now, we don't have a system that will do that, and I don't have a person that's dedicated to doing that. So that is a gap that many of the other systems around us do have a dedicated person. I would look at a position like that as being someone who is available to support us when we need it in our central office, and available to push into schools and be doing some of that work with teacher teams to help them to be really savvy with the data that will immediately impact their classroom instruction. So that is one piece that I just mentioned to Morgan that I'm not ready to say this is the vision for it. I think we should put it into the budget, but I did want to tip the board that that has been on my mind, and even just this week it's come up multiple times. And so They may come to the December meeting with a request for you to add that piece in. The second piece that has come up is that we have recently had an issue related to school nursing in the system. So we had a school nurse that we allowed to break contract to take a position late in the year. We had a late resignation at Cold Hollow. So a school nurse moved into our health educator, medical careers program. And so it left a vacancy in one of our elementary schools. We had a long-time retired school nurse who had done several long-term positions for us before, who unfortunately passed away, and very sadly passed away. We at that point had no nursing coverage at that school. So we learned a lot through the process. We have a couple of nurses that have been working at Enosburg Elementary. Douglas is here. She's actually one of them. She's been helping, and Ashley Mercy from Bakersfield as well. So they've been splitting some time. We now have a substitute RN hired. What I have learned through this process, and I have known for a while, is that there's a lot that I don't know about nursing. So it is very difficult to lead through challenges like that without having that medical background. And there is work that could be done across our system to be able to look deeply at maybe some procedures and policies and supervision and evaluation, nurse onboarding, training, things like that, that I don't have the skill set and expertise for, and no one else on our staff does. It really has to come from a nurse. So one thing that I have been also thinking about, and I shared this with our nursing team at a meeting earlier this week, is after having some conversations with leadership at the Vermont Department of Health, there is a school nurse lead model that some other schools have. I am not suggesting that we would put a whole position in the budget, but I would want to take this time between now and the next meeting to explore what are all of the ways that we could approach a nurse leadership model through the lens of we have a finite amount of nurses in our buildings, and is there a way for us to work through a model that would allow someone to have some space in their calendar to be able to take on some of those nurse leadership roles. So again, I'm not ready to present something to you tonight, but know that I'm going to be asking for something when I come back in December.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Any questions on either of those?
I mean, I can absolutely understand how those could be vital positions in the system to support, and already, like around the data, there's so much to, like you said, to kind of push out to the schools that the state requires, all these kind of tiers of important and critical data points that allow us to understand the progress that we're making across the schools and across the system. And I mean, it's tough. You're already kind of stretched thin with our tech people as it is. I assume that would be kind of within the tech kind of umbrella.
I had a conversation with Dominic about this today. He couldn't be here tonight. He's a coach, and it's his first game tonight.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
We had this conversation. He is one of the only tech directors that is also the data manager.
Yeah.
So he has, just to give some context, that the 24, 25, not going to get the name of it right, but the state reporting that was required to be done for the 24-25 school year was filled with problems, not our fault problems, but problems from a transition at the state level. And I think those were supposed to be done in August, and we just certified those maybe a week or two ago. So it has taken Dominic more than 3 months to complete. It's that level of project around data management that is just, until you see something like that, it is difficult to imagine. Like, he is literally every day working on the data. He submitted that and now has our fall report that's due on December 1. So he is crushed with that right now as well. So he'll be able to come up for air to do a little bit of the tech director work for the next few months before we'll get into the spring reporting. So it would be something that he may still hold some of that, but if there's a way for us to look at how could we make it so that we could find someone that is maybe, you know, an expert in data science. They have a degree in data science that could be savvy in order to help us at all levels related
Yeah.
to that data.
Hey Lynn, this is Akua. So in thinking about that, you know, the other options that I would want to consider and maybe hear more about are platforms, right? So data analytic platforms that might be out there that could support with this type of work as well. And I imagine the platform that you currently use may have some capability, but you know, are there modules within that that can assist with that, or are there other educational platforms with some support that can provide the, you know, what you need in terms of reporting that's already pre-built and, you know, reporting that's already pre-built that's being utilized across the already.
I think that's spot on, Akua. That was a part of our conversation as well, is assessing what we're currently using and seeing if that is meeting our needs, if we're utilizing it to its maximum capability, or is it time for us to look at, are there other tools that we can use in terms of data analytics? Because it is, I spend a lot of time when I'm trying to pull together data for any of these reports that I give to boards, it's difficult to pull it the way I want to be able to pull it. And I can't drill down and disaggregate it out the way I would like to make it actionable at the school level. Because that's the most important part about the data. It's not just the analyzing it, it's about like putting that data into action to be able to improve it. And that's a missing piece right now for us. So yes, the tool, the platform as well is part of that.
And I just wanted to speak to the nurse piece and just say, you know, that I understand why that could be a valuable role for someone to serve, to kind of support the nurses who work across the system. I mean, we have a head of food service and a head of buildings and facilities, and I can see where the nurses may get stretched thin at times, and it's harder to, and then you would have someone who could also sub in more gracefully at times too. And I know there are plenty of systems that have someone that serves in that capacity, especially when you have, you know, schools with diverse medical needs with students.
So I will come back with a variety of ideas about how we can approach that. Maybe a part of another person, or maybe thinking about extending a year for someone that we already have, or looking at, are there other ways that we could create a model that could function in a way where we could make that work. But I want to consult with VDH before we narrow down.
Yeah, and it'd be helpful to maybe hear how do other systems that have as many buildings each with their kind of unique nursing needs, how do they coordinate that with, if, you know, as far as a position like that, it would be helpful to hear what that looks like. Okay.
Go to the next one. In the packet that I emailed to you today, you have the budget detail as well, and this is in the same format as you received for your local budgets. We can go over any questions on this at the end of the presentation in terms of the changes from this month compared to last month. There's no new categories on here. It's just us tweaking things like health insurance and moving some of those positions around, especially in special education, and me just going through and looking at more current year expenses and trying to tighten things up for the small part of the budget that's not people. And then these charts you have seen locally. I think you saw these first two last month as well. First one splits out what we do. Almost half is direct instruction, and that is primarily special education. A little more than half is we call supportive instruction. So that's student support, district level administration, things like that. And then a small portion in red up on top. That's primarily fund transfers, some money that supports the food service program now in its own separate fund. And then the next one, what we buy, a little more dramatic than your local district levels. Well over 3/4 of what we spend is on people. And so if we get into December and we are looking to move this budget in a significant manner, it's really going to be talking about positions. The services section is in blue, and then sections in green. We really don't have that much debt at the supervisory union, a little bit in supplies, and then that fund transfer again. Fleshed out the budget overview. This on the slide deck is a little different than what you have in your packet, which now includes the projected revenue as well. And so happy to answer questions on some of the big movement on this. What I would call your attention to is we're still waiting for some guidance from the state in terms of revenue, most materially transportation aid. So that may move up or down from what I've projected, and to the extent that transportation aid goes up from what I've projected, your assessment will go down. We have not inked the transportation contract, but we just got the numbers today for the inflator that we're allowed to use, and it's just a hair lower than what I had predicted here. So the transportation numbers on page 2 in terms of the expenses are not going to move much from this budget. In terms of food service, we will continue to look at those numbers to the extent we get more information. The only things that would change that significantly now are if the state comes back and says that they anticipate reimbursement rates going up significantly more than Dawn and I have predicted. And we're really just looking at the last 2 years of where those numbers have gone and using that as a benchmark.
Morgan, you mean reimbursement rates for free and reduced lunch?
Yeah, as well as the money that the state kicks in for the universal meals. Exactly.
But at the federal level, that's potentially imperiled, the free and reduced lunch, because it's tied to the changes in Medicaid.
Correct. And I don't have any ability now to even predict how that could change, but we know that that could change. I feel like that's more likely a FY28 problem, but I don't have any facts to hang that opinion on.
It feels like the goalposts keep changing, right?
Yeah. Food service is a popular program, and the USDA is a relatively popular agency compared to, say, Department of Ed.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
The last thing on the two-pager that you got, the bill back expenses is something that I will go and clean up once the local districts have warned their budget. So there's a lot of folks that are either shared with grants, and so a portion are paid out of the SU budget, but they're not really your employees. So what we do is we just figure out what those folks are going to cost, and we build that right into the local budget, and it's kind of an in and out for us. I think those are the only things I wanted to call your attention to on these 2 pages. Right now, it looks like the overall amount of money that we're going to assess is just about $100,000 lower than last year. Again, that will change based on changes to revenue predictions and based on any decisions that we make in terms of additional positions at your December meeting, or at this meeting if you decide to change things tonight. This chart you have seen many times. Mentioned this a little bit, I think, at the ER meeting, Right now, the prediction that I've made for both NMV and ER is about a 2% increase in terms of education spending, which is the number that drives your per pupil spending amount, or where you are on this chart. What we are hearing statewide is that those predictions are coming in on average at about 6%. And so if those two numbers hold, that suggests that ER and NMV will likely see themselves slipping on this chart a couple of positions. We've got a long way to go before anybody finalizes a budget, but I think it was 5.8% is the likely number that's going to be used to drive the yield predictions by the tax department. And those are the numbers that start to come out on December 1st. I don't know if there's anything you want to, I feel like I should always let you add to this slide.
It's just one of those things, like, I know it's a balance when we start looking at those numbers and where they are, and I know we have always been very conscientious about what we spend on education, and I know that that is a priority, and it continues to be something that we work hard to do. And at the same time, as others are potentially moving, we're dropping further down. So I just always like to remind the board that it's important for us to think about the opportunities we provide our students as well. And we're not coming haphazardly to add things to our budgets, but at the same time, these decisions to come in low come at a cost in terms of comparative services that we're able to provide for our students. I'll just give one quick example in terms of, knowing there are other systems that are like, during the legislative session last year, I may have said this last spring, but when you hear about the academic outcomes of some systems, and you hear, where their starting point is in terms of the poverty level of their student population and the number of support people, the number of interventionists and other supports that they have in their system, it's vastly different than what we're offering in our schools. We're scrappy and we're working our way to try to improve academic outcomes, and at the same time, there needs to be an acknowledgement that we are making a choice about our level of service to our students by maintaining our budgets at this level. So I always feel like that has to be said as well.
Yeah, the discussions here are different than the discussions in communities that are talking about building turf fields, and it is a statewide funding system, so we're sort of all sharing at some level in those decisions. Then the last two slides in the slide deck that you have are similar to the pie charts earlier. This is just looking at us as a supervisory union-wide budget. So what I've done here is kind of backed out the tuition payments from NMV to ER, or from ER to their own tech center, and some of the duplicative costs for those build-back services that we provide at the SU. And then this will kind of give you an idea, if we were a single system at $52 million-ish dollars spent, how those monies would be spent. So in terms of the things that we do, about half of it is direct instruction, people in front of students for first instruction. Almost half of it is the student support and the kind of administrative costs, a big chunk for maintaining buildings and principals and your support staff in terms of guidance counselors, librarians, technology folks. And a little tiny slice in blue, which is stuff and bond payments. The next slide, again, what we buy. So 3/4 of what we spend is on our own staff, and that kind of the large section in green is purchase services. So that's largely going to be the tuition payments that NMV is making outside of RSU for their high school kids. So with that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions on any of the slides or on the detailed budget that was sent earlier. And again, we are hoping to finalize this in mid-December, setting up the two districts to finalize their budgets in early January. Lynn had mentioned two changes that we may be bringing to you in December. If there are any course corrections or any wonders that the board would like to see in December, it'd be good to have the next 4 weeks to model that out.
All right. Thanks, Morgan. Any more questions for Morgan from the board? Okay, and you're all set then?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, Lynn.
Okay, we'll start with a personnel report. So we have, I would say the last couple of weeks has been a little bit of a hiring frenzy. We have hired quite a number of support staff. We're happy to report that Bridget Adams has returned to us at Steps. We have hired a paraeducator at Rise, Miranda Bissett, Caitlin Gleason in Berkshire, Jennifer Bissett in Berkshire, Angela Cassidy switching to a BT paraeducator at Richford Elementary. These are all BT paraeducators except the last one.
This is, Morgan did not accept the position.
Okay. So that one's wrong. Rachel Bolio is a BT pre-K paraeducator at Richford Elementary School. Kayla Weatherby is returned to us and is a pre-K paraeducator in Sheldon. We've had a couple of resignations. Samantha Berth, behavior technician at Little Rise, and Miranda Harrington, a BT also at Little Rise. Both have resigned. We do have some open positions, and as Michelle indicated earlier, some of these positions have been open for a while. We're still looking for speech and language pathologists. We would love to hire some if we could find some. BCBA's, early childhood special educator, actually, that could come off as well, or almost.
Maybe by next month.
Okay, we'll know soon. We have a possibility there. We're looking for, the interventionist positions are seeming to be hard to fill. We're still looking for one at Enosburg Middle School for literacy and a mathematics interventionist at Sheldon. Both have been open for quite some time. We would love to have an in-person teacher for pre-K through 6, not pre-K, for K through 6 in an alternative program. In terms of support staff, our alternative programs, we're looking for behavior technicians. There are people that are listening out there. There is some financial, added financial benefit to work in our alternative programs. So when you're a BT, you make an extra $3 an hour, and if you work in an alternative program, that's an extra $2 an hour. So
With training.
What's that?
And we offer training.
And
so,
yeah, trainings. So it's hard work, rewarding work, and they're well compensated. Kitchen assistant and support staff. Jamie, you're going to have to help me out with Spanish English. I didn't look at what that was to begin with.
Got the sub we have right now.
Yes, that's
So
the
we
sub.
have a part-time need for a language support person for one of
Okay.
our students.
Gotcha.
That we're filling with a sub right now, but it's kind of a unique way to boost what Julie's doing,
Okay,
since we only have one person this year, so.
gotcha. So is their qualification is that they speak Spanish?
They have to speak
and
Spanish,
English?
yeah.
Okay.
And English.
And we're looking for substitute teachers across the board, teachers, nurses, paraeducators, custodians, and food service. At our last meeting, we talked about the district quality standards. Just as a quick reminder, the district quality standards were created by the Agency of Education. They're now in statute, and these are standards used to assess the quality of the work we're doing across our entire system. So there are two sets of standards. There are education quality standards that we're required to make sure that we are complying with, that are made by the State Board of Education, and those are things we are actively working towards meeting those standards that were updated effective July 1. The district quality standards went live on July 1 as well. So we are required to do, this is part of a beta test, and we're required to do a self-assessment. You all were surveyed between the last board meeting and this board meeting. By you all, I mean board members. And you were asked to look at each of the indicators and mark where you thought our proficiency level was. Mary and I met, reviewed the data that we received from board members, and then chose which indicator made the most sense, or which proficiency level made the most sense for each indicator. So our next steps will be to look at these indicators and decide which ones we want to create, to use to create goals to move forward with. There's no expectation that we would be proficient in all of these indicators. As I said, these are all brand new standards that have just really been fully released this fall. So our data has to be submitted. I'll be pushing these in tomorrow, most likely. I think they're due on Friday. And this will be used to give an indication at the state level of how the data is coming out, but it will not be specific to each individual district. Next year will be different. Next year we will have to do the self-assessment of the district quality standards. This is only a small portion of the standards. There are more indicators. We will need to self-assess all indicators in all 3 boards, and that work will be public. So they'll do a report for each school district and supervisory union across the state. So there's more to come on the DQS, but this is where we landed. Any questions on that? Okay, let's talk about school redistricting. So there's 1 meeting left for the redistricting task force, and it's actually tomorrow. There's been a lot that has gone on. I've listened to most of the last meeting that happened on, I think it was on the 10th. One of the things that they talked about in that meeting that I thought would be useful to bring here is they talked about school choice and how we tend to use school choice in a little bit of an interchangeable way when we're talking about different things. So I'm going to ask Courtney to open that link that says types of school choice in Vermont, and I just want to do some level setting with the board and with our leaders to make sure that when we say school choice, we know what we're talking about. So there are multiple kinds of school choice in Vermont. So there is the school choice when we think about NMV district. We do not operate schools 9 through 12. So we pay tuition. Those students have school choice where their tuition dollars go to whatever school they're choosing to attend. So those students have what they're calling school choice, but it's a tuition school choice. The next school choice came as a result of a law that was passed back in 2012, and this is public high school choice. This is not tuition driven. This is kind of a lottery system. So in schools that operate high schools 9 through 12, so for us, this public high school choice has to do with our Enosburg and Richford students. So they're supposed to attend the high school in the town in which they reside. That's what historically has happened. In 2012, this opened up so that students in school systems that operate those high school grade levels still can have some limited choice. So they could fill out an application, always due on March 1st of each year, and they can apply to go to a different school. There are limits. It's a lottery system, and there are limits in the number of students that are accepted in and allowed out on any school. There's no money that exchanges hands between the systems for this. It is just part of this choice piece. So non-tuition public high school choice. Then there is intra-district choice. And so when we merged under Act 46, that was one of the policies that many of these unified boards talked about was, can we think about this as this is one system? So a lot of choice policies were established, including an FNESU, which is also linked in this presentation, where we have the two districts, we have Enosburg, Richford, and Northern Mountain Valley. And so students who live in that Northern Mountain Valley district, their parents can choose to send them to any of those 4 towns if they live in those 4 towns, as long as there's space. The same for Enosburg and Richford, so they can have choice in either of those 2 towns. This has been really hard for our community to understand because we talk a lot about FNESU as our supervisory union, but we're not a district. We're an SU that has 2 districts. So our choice policy doesn't allow for that cross supervisory union or cross district choice in most cases. So we have inter-district choice policies. We won't go there today, but they're linked in. They're number 1 and 2 in this slideshow, which you also have access to. The final choice is in a small number of cases, there is some student-specific arrangement that can be made between schools across the state of Vermont. This is something that has not occurred a lot to my knowledge. And so that would be on a case-by-case, really special circumstance situation. I want to go back, Courtney, to the previous one. Or actually, if you could go back to the slideshow. We did, when we merged, talk about how we have some strange geography within FNESU, where some of our students live in towns that they have to cross through other towns to get to their actual school. I'll give you a couple of examples. We have a cross-district school choice policy, and that was written for, we have Black Falls in Montgomery, where you live, Mary. At the very top of Black Falls is the town of Richford. So if there are people that live there, they have to attend Richford Elementary School generally, but they have to drive into the town of Montgomery and then drive either on South Richford Road or through Berkshire to get to Richford. There are other situations where there are people that live up on Enosburg Mountain, which is you drive up West Hill in Montgomery, go all the way to Enosburg Mountain. That's one way to get up there. That's Enosburg, but the only way that those kids can come to school is to drive through Montgomery and Berkshire to get to Enosburg. So under this policy, there are very special circumstances where if students have to drive through another town to get to their resident elementary school, we allow some of that. Like those students that are up in Black Falls are allowed to attend Montgomery. Students that are at Enosburg Mountain are allowed to attend Montgomery. And there are a couple other, I can't remember specifically some of the other roads, but it's a very small number of students that this is impacted, but we have used this policy. Does that make sense?
And no money follows those
No money
kids,
follows,
right?
no. The only money that is the first type, the school
Right.
choice, that is for the NMV students that are that's truly school choice, where
Yeah.
there is tuition that's following them
At the high school level.
at the high school level only. So it's important to know that because school choice is playing a big factor in redistricting conversations across the state of Vermont, the tuitioning kind of school choice. So where we're at is when they went into this last meeting, there were still 3 maps that were on the table. The first I will talk about is the Cooperative Education Service Area map. This is often referred to as a BOCES, where the map that you're seeing on the screen that represents what is currently the Vermont Superintendents Association region, so 5 regions across the state of Vermont. Those regions are not intended to be merged into a governance structure. Those regions on that map are just intended to have a system that's created to help them to have, the best way I could describe it would be to say a system where you had larger buying power, where you're working in this cooperative service area to be able to contract for your transportation, your special education, maybe your food service, things like that differently. So we would be, in this proposal, teamed up with all of the Champlain Valley, so that would be Franklin, Grand Isle, all of Chittenden, and 2/3 of Addison County. would be a part of one cooperative education service area. This was voted out of the committee on November 10th. It was an 8-3 vote in favor of this model. One of the challenges with this model is it doesn't meet what Act 73 set them off to do, which was to create a map that articulates a governance structure, a merging of governance structures. So this does not equate to any district mergers that are forced. Instead, they're recommending that mergers be agreed upon between systems, talking with our friends and neighbors about who would like to merge with us and who would be logical to merge with us. There are some strong recommendations around ultra small systems, especially with less than 500 students, as being pretty necessary to merge. But again, there's no mandatory merging on this map. There's a tie in this proposal connected to comprehensive high school districts. It's not really clear on the maps, but we'll go there next. So just know that in what is passed through, the idea is you have that kind of BOCES with the 5 regions. They want everybody to work with their neighbors to voluntarily merge and start working towards building comprehensive high schools, which in my mind, and I think in reality, the comprehensive high schools will require the state to figure out construction aid, which we haven't had since, I believe, 2003 in Vermont. I think that was the last year we had it. So this proposal going into the meeting on November 10th was around comprehensive high schools. And you can see on the right-hand side, they came up with 20 comprehensive high schools around the state. The black dots on that map represent those comprehensive high schools. Enosburg Falls High School was one that was identified, and they projected that they would have an estimated population of students of 854. We, at the beginning of this process, we looked at all of our facilities and looked at, what are the capacities in all of the facilities we have, and we're nowhere near a capacity where we could put 854 students in here. We certainly could fit more than what we have, but not 854. So this would, we would need to have construction aid in order to be able to move in this direction.
Doesn't that map also give us Franklin, the town of Franklin?
I think it did it in this one.
Yeah.
There have been so many versions, I'm struggling to remember. So there are, each of these maps kind of breaks up systems differently. So I think it keeps us whole and adds Franklin in, and it pushes Alberg in with Missisquoi Valley, and I don't remember what the other little piece is. There's something about BFA Fairfax that I'm not remembering. This map is for public only, but then there's another map right below it, and you can look at this later, that indicates where the independent schools are. So these are comprehensive high schools with traditional academies. There are the schools or areas without black circles. They're saying we would need to create CTE programs in those areas. So when you look at some of those, there are some CTE deserts, especially in the south, in the southern part. There's some on the eastern side of the state as well. So there would be some needs around construction under this plan. On the next visual, when they were talking about comprehensive high schools, they were talking about drive time. So they overlaid some data, and they talked about comprehensive high schools through the lens of what would a 30-minute commute time look like to each of these comprehensive high schools. And you look at it through the lens of how many students are within that 30-minute drive time. So that's where they came up with that 854 student number. Those are the number of students that they think that would be within that range.
And that's not bus transportation time, that's driving in a car.
I don't know.
That's what they said on the,
Okay, I missed that part.
I was listening to it.
Okay. The CTE map, I'm sorry, I'm going to move on to CTE map. Let me say about the comprehensive high school, this did not move through. This was a vote, I don't remember what the vote was. Do you remember?
I They never voted on the comprehensive high school. It's sort of got absorbed into the
Okay.
BOCES.
So they weren't opposed to it, but they didn't vote in favor of sending it as an actual map
As a
with
separate
merged
map.
districts.
Right.
But the idea of the comprehensive high school was liked under the BOCES model. Got it. So the CTE map is the last thing that I will show you. And this was a map that contained both districts and supervisory unions. So we would have had 7 districts in Vermont and 7 supervisory unions. It's hard to see, but up you can kind of see in our area that that tan section would have been us, and I believe that would have ended up being, I think all of Franklin County. That has changed a couple of times where a piece of Fairfax went south, and I think Alburgh was in this at one point. They're not in it now. So this was the final map that was proposed. Where they decided to put the districts was where there were no independent schools, and where they chose to keep supervisory union structures were where those independent schools, the areas near where those independent schools were. So this map was defeated 3-8 when they brought this up. The perception was it was drawn primarily to benefit the private schools, and we just talked about tuitioning. So you can imagine you need to have a structure that allows for the tuitioning where the tuition dollars move, and you need to be in an SU to do that part. This map, although it did not pass through the redistricting committee, what we know of what their task was, that committee was never going to make a decision about a map. That committee was expected to produce up to 3 maps for the legislature to consider. So it's likely that the legislature will take up this map or other different maps as well. Any questions about all of this?
So if I'm understanding correctly, the BOCES map is the only one that the committee felt favorably about.
Correct. It is the only one that does not propose forced mergers.
But I'm not understanding how adding another layer of administrative bureaucracy across an even greater geographical area gets to the heart of what we're trying to do, which is what you spoke to at the end of the budget discussion, that we don't want to be at the very bottom of that graph anymore, and we have to always thread this fine needle with our taxpayers, acknowledging the burden on them, acknowledging that we want more for our students, we want to improve outcomes. And I thought that was the whole nexus of the governor's plan, and all that has been, after many months, presented and moved forward is something that seems to address things at a bureaucratic level. How does that BOCES model get to that heart of more equitable funding that doesn't overburden our taxpayers and elevates what we're able to provide our students?
It's a really great question, Mary, because that is the reaction this has gotten from some people. People who are advocating for the BOCES would say that we're going to be able to be more efficient by purchasing professional learning together, by thinking about curriculum resources together. This is a model in other states. There's data. We've linked in the presentation, so you can go in where it says draft report and presentation. You can read a little bit about some of the things that they will believe will come of that, but I'm going to give you my 2 cents because you know that's what I do. That alone won't do anything, because we know we have too many schools and too few students, and no one wants to say that out loud.
Across the state, not just
I'm not
specific
talking
to
about
our system.
specific in our system.
Yeah.
I'm saying across the state, we have to be able to talk about that, and that is a highly emotional thing for people to talk about, because people want to see change as long as it's not in their backyard, and people want a more affordable education system and more opportunities at the same time. So we can't have all of those things. So the idea of the BOCES being the only thing My wonder is how many communities will actually say, we see this problem and we will do this on our own, for those of us who lived through Act 46 and saw what it did
Right.
just to take the towns that we had in FNESU at the time and do that work to get our towns to agree to work together, to look at the BOCES map and think that we're going to get district consolidations that will happen in a voluntary way through an engaged community process is difficult for me to imagine, that we'll get that on a wide scale across the state. And the idea also is there are difficult decisions that need to be made about how we operate our system and at what scale. So in my mind, those hard conversations have to be had, because exactly to my point, the foundation formula is supposed to be happening 2 years from now, Morgan. One more budget cycle, and then the third would be foundation formula. So the idea is they're trying to bring everybody to the same place. But I think there needs to be, like, doing that without addressing governance and without addressing scale across the state is going to be very challenging. Do you have things that you would like to add to that?
Just to remind people that this is one step in what's still a long process, and the map drawing was always going to live with the legislature and should live with the legislature. So the commission's inability to put forward some maps with mergers doesn't necessarily suggest that anything's over. It's just that the legislature is now starting where they left it in May or June of last year.
Well, it's just a rather uninspiring outcome after many, many months of work.
I think that
I don't doubt that effort and time, and I
Yeah.
don't want to minimize the effort and time that went into it, but it doesn't seem like this is the kind of innovative change across the state that we're needing if we really want to up-level how we fund education and how we best support our students in systems like ours that have been historically disadvantaged.
the conversations we have here are very, very different than the conversations that are happening in a lot of the other systems across the state. We have a very different perspective because what they're facing is a significant decline. They look at it through the lens of a significant decline in opportunity and backslide from them being able to spend what they're spending and provide those opportunities. So I think that's part of what's made it really challenging is the advocacy has been very, very strong across the state, and this committee has heard from every corner of Vermont about what their perspectives are on what this would do to their communities. So I think they found it very difficult to move forward with anything other than what they did. However, they have a full-day meeting tomorrow, and I think if you've watched the news at all this week or read Digger or anything like that, there's been a lot of discussion about, but this doesn't meet Act 73. So I do wonder what will come of tomorrow's meeting. So they have this one final meeting, and then they have to write their report. So, like Morgan said, I mean, we know ultimately the legislature's going to make the decision anyway, but we have to see what comes out of tomorrow as well. It's a moving target, and it's kind of fascinating to watch.
Indeed, thanks.
So I will talk about academic growth data. I'm going to start with literacy this month, and I will bring you math academic growth data in December. So it is in your slides. It's a little difficult to be able to see here. So we finally have the VT-CAP assessment results. Part of the issue with the assessment is it takes a long time for them to release this information. We've been able to see the information for a period of time, but the information has been embargoed from being able to share publicly until pretty recently. So what we're seeing are the performance areas for how our students did. Blue would be exceeding, green would be meeting, yellow would be approaching, and red would be significantly below what the target is. So we have seen a small growth line, not the percentage that we had hoped to see in terms of the increase in academic performance, but we are seeing a slight increase in academic performance for ELA, and we are starting to see some of the numbers in the lower levels begin to decrease, which is also one of the goals that we have. So this is one assessment that we take. If you could go back up, Courtney. The BT CAP is one assessment that we take in the spring. So it's a moment in time snapshot of where the students are. And I think most of the students start taking it in March, if I'm not mistaken, March and April, Gab. Does that make sense?
The BT CAP?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So it is before the end of the academic year. So another assessment that we use regularly and we often use to report out to you is the STAR assessment. So we looked at some district-wide trends with our STAR assessment data, and what you're seeing there is what STAR is an assessment by a company called Renaissance, and Renaissance takes a look at all of the state assessments because they differ. We don't all take the same assessment, and they set a benchmark that is intended to predict the percentage of students, if they took the assessment, then the percentage of students that would be proficient. So what this is indicating on this line, you can see it's the same performance. The colors are blue exceeding, green meeting, yellow approaching, red significantly below. So you can see that we do have a slight increase in the lines of the green and the blue, slight decrease of the yellow, and unfortunately we saw an increase in the red there. So that was a little discouraging to look across a 5-year trend line by looking at the state benchmark. We did the same thing for spring to spring. So how did the data look when students took the STAR assessment in each of the springs across the last, I guess it's 4 years, not 5 on this. One thing I forgot to mention is we made a shift in our literacy program last school year. As you all know, we shifted to the science of reading. So that's the dashed line that you see. That's when we made that shift. So we're seeing some decline in the yellow and the red and some increase in the blue and the green in our spring outcomes, which again is intended to be, Courtney, is intended to be an indicator of proficiency on the VT CAP. So there's also data when we take the STAR assessment, they have a district benchmark that they, it comes from Renaissance, and that's something that they determine by looking at all, the way I understand it is they look at the performance levels of all of the students across the country and what they deem as being proficient. So Courtney, if you could go up one, no, the other way.
Yeah.
This is our directional thing with the mouse pad. That, we have opposite mouse pads and it tricks us both up. So even though the first look at the data is discouraging, there is this look at the data when it's looking at what that district benchmark trend is. So looking from fall of 21-22 to the fall, this past fall when our students took the assessment, we saw over the past 3 years in the fall a pretty steep increase in the number of students who were at or above proficiency. And on this indicator, that at or above is blue. We saw kids who are on watch start to come back down. Kids who needed intervention, the yellow, were coming back down, and we saw a significant decline in the students in need of urgent intervention come back down. So this is evidence for us that what we're doing is having a positive effect on our students and has not yet brought us over what the state threshold line is, but we're seeing that sharp increase when you look at it through the lens of that district benchmark that's set through Renaissance. And we want to see like the correlation between the blue going up and the other colors going down, because it's fewer students that are needing the extra support. So we also looked at what do the spring outcomes look like when we compare over a 4-year period, how our students are performing in the spring. Again, we saw for the last 2 years a significant spike in student performance in that spring assessment, and we saw urgent intervention was an exciting data point where you could see how steep that decline was for the students who were very below that benchmark. So the moral of this story is that we are not where we want to be yet, but we are encouraged that the efforts that we have in place and the work that we're doing to support literacy proficiency across the system is working. We're seeing positive trend lines. We're seeing decreases in students that need that, which helps our whole MTSS system. We can be more effective when there are fewer students that need that level of support. So we're going to keep working at it, keep working at strengthening the MTSS system and our first instruction. Gab, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Good job.
I just want to say, to our other point, producing this data was not easy
Yeah,
to
sure.
be
I was
able
thinking the same
to
thing.
do.
Yeah.
And I will just give, I want to give Leah a shout out, because Leah has been doing a lot of the data work for us to try to get something where we can show what that progress looks like. So we'll keep working at it.
Great. Excellent. Thanks, Lynn.
The last thing I have, if there are no questions about the data, Northwest Access. I want to just take a moment to acknowledge our partners from Northwest Access, who do a really good job of supporting us in our work and making our work accessible to our community members by recording our meetings. They make it so that we can have people attend virtually, and their microphones make this really accessible for people to be here but not physically in the room. So Northwest Access has been a great partner, and last year we voted as a board to support them financially for the efforts that they're taking for our board. So there's a request from Northwest Access this year to cover the costs of the supporting these meetings of $2,340, and I'm asking the board to consider making a motion to support Northwest Access and pay for their services.
Any discussion from the board about that request from Northwest Access?
I didn't add this last night, but I'll add it right now. I know you can't probably read all of that, but there's a data point in here. More than 1,100 people viewed our meetings on our YouTube channel over the past year. So it is a benefit to our community, and people do watch.
Absolutely. Well, as I said last year, I think when we had this same discussion, I think they serve a really valuable role. They allow people who otherwise can't be here to keep abreast of what we're doing across the system. I think it's money well spent. So I'm certainly in favor of continuing that support. Any other discussion from the board? Okay, so oh, did you want to say something, Akua?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to agree. I think it's a valuable resource, for sure. So I'm in agreement with this, and I'm happy to start off with a motion as well.
Great, thank you so much. We'll do that by roll. Akua?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you so much.
And before we move fully off of the data, Courtney, I know you took it down. I hate to ask a lot of questions just knowing how difficult it is to pull it at this point, but I'm interested to know about the comparison in terms of the data across other systems in the state. Do we have access to that type of information, and
We
that we can, well?
I can't get anything for anything other than VTCAP. So I can look at the VTCAP comparison percentages compared to the statewide average. I haven't tried to do that, so I haven't tried to do that yet this year, so I don't know if we can pull we used to be able to pull a full report. I don't know if we still can.
I don't know.
We can look into that, Akua. There have been some changes in reporting. VTCAP is still relatively new to the state. Is it 4th year? This 3rd year.
This might be the 3rd year.
Okay. So we'll look, and I will bring that back next time if we're able to do that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think, as we're starting to be able to have access to more and more data, it'd be good to be able to benchmark against, the other systems within our state for sure. And so I'd appreciate that.
I will, I'd love to have conversations about benchmarking, and I love to talk about the starting line as well. And that's something that I've had conversations with the Agency of Education, I've had these conversations with Zoe about our comparisons are, I think we need to look at systems as a whole across the state, and I think we need to look at other contributing factors, so looking at systems that have similar demographic information or data that we do as well. I think we should look at those comparisons and pull those out, and I think that we should look to see if there are some patterns around spending per pupil as well. I would love to be able to dig in at that level to look at that data.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, anything like that to help tell the whole story would be helpful.
Anything else, Lynn?
No.
Okay. Okay, so we will move on to our central office reports. And Gab, is there anything that you'd like to add to yours?
I want to just point to, Akua asked for data around professional learning and some of the feedback that we get from teachers, so I included that in this month's board report, and Leah reported on some of the work that she's doing on Tuesdays with the literacy team, K-5 and 6-8. So some of that data is in there if you have any questions about it. We collect that at almost every PD session that we do, for every SU PD session for sure. And then both Leah and Mary are collecting for their Tuesday work. So just let me know if you have any questions about that. And then also, we did something kind of fun at In-Service that I just thought I would share. We had people take pictures and submit. They could also submit like quote or something. And they had a ton of fun with it and submitted a lot of good stuff. So I don't know, that's a fun addition.
Not so flattering pictures of some of us.
Yeah.
They were also submitting to win door prizes by doing that.
Correct.
As well.
Yeah. So just a little fun for professional learning that I thought went really well.
Thanks. I mean, that's a great report. There's a lot of info in there, so I appreciate you providing all of that. Thank you. So next up, Michelle.
I've been spending a lot of time with special educators recently around looking at the disability categories and ensuring that they have the right, you okay? That the disability categories, the goals match the disability categories. So, for example, getting this has happened in the last couple of months, like an increase in requests for behavior technicians for students who are struggling behaviorally. And when I look at what I see on paper, their documents, looks like they have a specific learning disability or a disability in articulation. And to me, a kid who has an articulation struggle in speech and language does not require a behavior technician. So having teams get together and have the discussion about like what information do we really need in order to program around a kid, and let's ask the right questions. And so that's what I've been doing, a lot of that with special educators. And then Melissa and I went to Lake Maury a few weeks ago now to a state special education meeting. And they talked a lot about they are developing a new monitoring system, which is going to occur every 5 years now, and it's called a differentiated cyclic monitoring. And they're going to look at transition plans and these prior written notice forms and IEPs and special ed policies. And I did what probably everybody did and looked to see when I'm in the list to be monitored, which is not for another 2 years. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to worry about this kind of right now, because who knows with all the changes that are happening, what it will look like. So I did listen, but just not as intently as I would have if my name was on the list for next year. Just saying. And then we were given some data that I need to dig in more and talk to Lynn about. But the data is 2 years old now, so it's kind of hard to use that. I mean, some of the kids aren't. Anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit more about that, which we haven't had a chance yet. So
Can I
will
just
share.
ask if it has to do with access plans or transition plans?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is in there, but it's a lot about students with special ed and where we fall in like a wide variety from preschool right through 12th grade of everything from expulsions to suspensions and expulsions to
Service settings.
yep to how many special ed students are passing at like 4th and 8th grade like the whatever it's the BCAT.
VTCAP.
Yeah, BTCAP stuff. So it's a lot. So, yep. And then there was a big discussion from Alicia Hannaran, who's like the education programs manager for the agency, speaking about the rise of students with acute disabilities that are requiring residential placements. And we spent a good deal of time talking about mental health and what that's looking like in the state of Vermont. And I keep getting I kind of follow a little bit of Lynn with her advocacy in the legislature around mental health, and talked a lot about that. I feel like schools can do school, like we can figure out school, and that meaning I think other schools have the ability to create alternative programming like we have.
And several have.
And some have.
And observed your programs.
Actually, I'm
and
meeting
modeled.
with Addison, one of the Addisons, on December 4th, actually, that they want to come and visit. And that my big preach is I wish that the independent schools, I don't want them to go away, but like a SOAR Learning Center, for example, I wish that could turn into like half residential and half like psychiatric, day treatment, intensive mental health, because we can do reading, writing, and math. That's the
It's
area
the
that we're
crisis
struggling in.
stabilization
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
right?
Yes. So like we just recently had a student that was in the emergency room for 5 days waiting to get to Brattleboro. So it's, yeah, a lot of that. It's still happening. Yeah.
And in that conversation around residential placements and the desire to pull more students back into their home districts, are they indicating that there are going to be funds available to help with the increased costs, or really that just continues to be on the onus of our budget?
Most of the residential, like if we decide as an IEP team to place a student in residential and say like this is our offer of faith, then it is on the school district, and there's a percentage that gets reimbursed to us. We typically don't get to that level where the mental health agency or DCF would be usually the ones that will place a student in residential, and then the financial burden is on those agencies and not us. Sometimes we pay for tutoring, depending on what residential facility is chosen, because they don't always have an educational component, and then we would be responsible for that.
So this is another example of cost shift, right?
Mhm.
We are talking about the education fund and the implications of the growing education fund when, as a state, we have not been investing in our mental health systems. And we've seen year over year of our mental health systems just being level funded or decreased. And we don't have beds, we don't have crisis beds for students, and we do not have residential beds for students. The last time I checked the data, and it's been admittedly probably a year, it was right around half of the students that had to go residential were going out of state, far.
There are-
Like Colorado, Texas,
It's Colorado,
Florida.
she brought this up, it's Colorado, Florida, like students with like autism is in New Hampshire. The closest one is New Hampshire, but that's for like a specific disability of students with autism. But yeah, most of our students in Vermont are either in Florida or Colorado, a couple in Pennsylvania.
And is the Brattleboro retreat the
That's-
only place now where we have?
And that's mostly in assessments. Like I thought the
Short-term.
student that we have was going to be there for a 90-day assessment, and we talked to the family yesterday, and they said 8 to 10 days, and they're going to decide. So yeah.
I think that we do have Jarrett House in Burlington. Like, there's some things that didn't fully come back after
Yeah.
COVID, so
Yeah.
they still have, like, the last time I looked at the map, it was only four days per week, or they were like day but no evening, and so
The Jarrett House is now Monday through Friday, no weekends. It used to be like a 2-week, you go and
Yep, that's stabilized.
Yep, stable, right. And now it's more like a respite for families,
Mhm.
and while they wait for other assessment opportunities for kids. So.
And FI also has hospital diversion, or they used to have on
Yeah.
Allen Road in Burlington, which was, instead of sending kids to Brattleboro or out of state, they could try a hospital diversion program there. I don't know if it's still.
I think it's reduced accessibility.
But at this meeting, I asked, like, is there anybody from the agency that is advocating to make this shift? Because, you know, talking about cost savings and like, I mean, that is a huge expense, and we can't serve students. And she just said, oh, we're not there yet. Like, the agency is not there yet to be able to advocate at the legislative level to make some of these shifts.
There was
So-
no one working on mental health at the agency the last time I asked.
Yeah. So we keep
It's-
going, doing the
it's-
best we can.
I mean, I was going to say it's surprising, but it really isn't.
Mhm.
But it seems as though the state of Vermont needs a much better system. Like, I didn't realize we're sending kids as far away as Colorado and Florida. I can only imagine the strain that puts on families. And I'm just find it troubling that we aren't devoting resources toward more facility, more beds in the state of Vermont.
And
the
reintegration
kids-
is so hard when you're that far away. like,
Right.
Well, that's what
transitioning
she was
back is
talking
just
about
really
too,
effective.
to us, was that, for the students that are in residential placements, the expectation of school districts is to be involved and stay involved with students. And she said, you know, if you have a kid in New Hampshire, plan a trip to go visit the student in New Hampshire. And it sounds, and there's technology now, so we most certainly, I'm sure, could be able to, you know, have Google Meets and things like that, because it does happen. Like, we've had students that we get like 2 weeks, like they're leaving the residential facility, and you have, you know, 2-week planning, and they're coming
Yeah.
back, and then here they are. Yeah. So.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Michelle.
Sure, I just want to highlight a couple spots in my report. So the Behavior MTSS team met today, and to kind of carry on Lynn's theme of data, it is the biggest pain point for that team to sort of, we realized today, like, we have very little common data that we're collecting and no place to put it once we do collect it. So we're working to kind of find ways to systematize a little bit better the types of data we're collecting and where we're putting it, and then, you know, how to analyze it, and breaking it down again by disaggregating it by different categories has been really challenging. So that's not a place we are at, and it's a place we need to be at.
We do have a data system, we put our behavior, just want to make sure that we add this piece.
Sure.
Power School does have a way that we track our majors and state reportables, but it's not in a system that you're describing that would be actionable and useful for our teams.
Right. And and using it to collect the data and report out by across schools.
Yes.
And disaggregate it that way. So that's been challenging. So that is high on our list of priorities as a team to work on this year. And so I just wanted to kind of make that plug. And then I put some data in here about our English language learners because that came up as in the staffing patterns. We have seen a kind of stable number of students in our English language learner population. What we have, I think we can celebrate is we had a number of students who, what we call test out, which means that they moved into a proficiency level that they no longer needed direct instruction in that language. So it's working. You know, that's the moral of the story. So we have more students in sort of the upper levels. We've had a few new students come in this year, probably about the same number we had last year total. So it's kind of stable. But we've had more kids make bigger progress. So we're kind of excited about that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michelle. Heather.
Yeah, just a couple of the highlights in here. If you didn't get a chance to see it, our middle high school students at Enosburg and Richford performed Once Upon a Mattress last week. It was phenomenal. Just absolutely a fantastic show. Students built the set, they performed. Two of the students, performers, are also teaching drama at the Enosburg Elementary program. So one of the days of the production was the class that they were supposed to have. So another student and I walked them over and they got a behind the scenes tour from their drama instructor. And it was a really great moment. A lot of wonderful questions that they were asking. And then when I saw the performance, I saw some of the kids there watching it. So it was a nice theater opportunity. We've got the student leadership opportunities and connecting our middle school students, elementary and high school students all together in one bundle. And in the Saturday performance, it was really touching watching the seniors each gave little speeches about how drama has been really important to them and the connections they've made with the instructors who are leading and supporting. It was really touching and heartwarming, and so glad that we've been able to revitalize this program after we've been doing it the last couple of years, but it had a few-year hiatus for those who didn't know that. And also, one of the other things in my notes was two of our programs received a small grant through Vermont for School and the McClure Foundation. Again, they've been great partners to help us target elementary school students for career awareness opportunities. So our staff at Richford High School, it's elementary and middle school, sorry, Richford High School and Sheldon, they will receive the training. There's going to be some modules. They'll do some implementation work, and we're really excited about that. And so the stipend that we're receiving is going to help with some of that additional work. And one other thing, at Richford Elementary, we're going to be having a change. We recently received a resignation from the coordinator there, Carrie Ross. She's been the coordinator there for 15 years. Marvelous program. So we do have that opening. She's going to be leaving us at the end of December.
Thank you. Jamie.
So we've had, as Lynn said, we had a few changes to staff. So we had hired 7 additional staff members. So now it's 6 because we found out today one's not going to start after Thanksgiving break. And let's see. And so we've had 7, those 7, because we transitioned 1 para to a BT para. We've had 7 that are micro-credentialed. So that's 13 new behavior intervention paras for this year that we've added total. And then I guess the biggest thing for this month, tomorrow goes out the open enrollment paperwork. I give people from now till before they leave for the Christmas break, the holiday break, to get that back to me. So we're anticipating that we might have an increase of staff that are coming onto our insurance just because of the changes to the Vermont Health Connect, increases in prices. So they might be coming onto our plan, but overall from last year to this year, we had a reduction of staff. It was a reduction of 4 employees.
I'm going to add on to what you just said because I was supposed to address it in mine and I forgot. That is one thing that we're worried about in terms of budget is right now our health insurance looks pretty good. But we had someone in our office that yesterday that was talking about how their health insurance is going from, they were paying $350 a month
For 2 people.
and for a 2-person plan, and they just learned that their new payment was going to be $2,500 a month. So I think people are right now finding out the true impact of what's about to happen to their health insurance. So as we're thinking about our budgets, I am wondering what's going to happen to us during open enrollment, how many of our staff members might be on a plan that's being significantly impacted by the shifts in health insurance costs. So it is possible we'll see a significant increase in the number of people who take our insurance.
I think I've given Morgan, 3 people so far and I haven't even sent the paperwork out yet.
Right.
And is there going to be a cutoff on that so that Morgan can adjust the budget?
Open enrollment goes till December 31st, right?
Well, I have them get me the paperwork before they leave for the break.
Okay.
That way I can send it in and it goes into effect January 1.
But
The
will
change
we
in
have
circumstances.
Will we
We'll
have
capture as much.
finalized our budget by then?
Yes, hopefully.
Okay.
And we'll capture as much as we can, but, I mean, there's, changes of circumstance that can happen anytime.
Yeah,
Sure.
qualifying
So,
events.
Okay.
It may be something that's longer than the budget season.
Does
Yeah.
premium increase constitute a change in circumstance?
No.
So if they give up their health insurance because they've had an exorbitant premium increase?
I mean, as far as joining outside of open enrollment, I don't believe so. I think there are other qualifying events, losing
Losing their coverage.
insurance or something like.
Births, marriages.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
There's a list of
I
qualifying
wasn't sure what
events.
losing insurance was.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't really tell us that. Like, sometimes the insurance company will ask me to submit the letter that they get that says my coverage is ending on this date. They don't really ask maybe why, whether someone chooses or not.
Mary, back to your point, the NMV and ER budgets will not have been finalized by that, but the SU will. It's fewer employees that could be impacted. by the
Okay.
SU budget.
Okay.
One other question, Jamie, from the report. Does the utilization of FMLA, is that an uptick from what we're usually seeing, or is that similar to what we've seen in past years?
I think it's pretty similar. I mean, FMLA is anything over 5 days. So some of these, like the 6 that require licensed long-term subs, those are typically parental leave. But the others could be somebody that has a quick surgery and they're only out for 1 week or 2 weeks. They're not all really long leaves, but no, I think it's pretty typical of what we do each year.
Got it, thank you.
And then the only other thing that I didn't put on here, but it'll be going out in the newsletter, and we can report out next month, is our deadlines for column movements and retirements. Teacher retirements are December 1st. So we'll have a good sense of who will be retiring by December 1.
Great. Thanks so much. Dawn?
So this past week, we did our community meals in all of our schools. We had a really good turnout with those. It's a great opportunity for family members and community to connect with our schools while enjoying a meal together with their students. we did do some work with one of our elementary schools, and I've heard only positive feedback on that as far as how the flow went and everything there. So that was really nice to get that one, coming around, because it's a small space with a large number of students and a large number of family members that like to come in and participate with that. All of this work could not be possible without the work of the food service staff. Like, they do an exceptional job, an outstanding job. It's a big ask for them, and it's serving a lot of people in a short amount of time, and so they go above and beyond to do that. We get some help from the community, from the building as well. We always have extra hands on deck for that day as much as we can, just because when you're talking a big meal like that and extra people, it takes extra time. And then looking ahead on Monday, this coming Monday, we're going to do training here at Enosburg High School for food service staff. One of the things that we are going to be training on is a new ordering platform that our vendor is rolled out to us, and they're going to come and train the food service staff on that, because ultimately training food service staff on ordering new ways on a computer is sometimes challenging, just because it's not like you're going in a grocery store and picking out what you want. There's certain things that you have to look for to make sure that that food is in compliance with our regulations. So.
Thanks so much.
This is Dawn. They're really great. I appreciate you throwing them in there from the Thanksgiving meal.
Thank you.
It looks like it was a good turnout.
It was. This year we actually had parents who joined us at the middle and high school level at both of our middle high schools. So that was a nice plus this year.
I think they really pushed out more of an invitation to get people there.
Yep.
Awesome.
We had many of them ask if we were going to do one in December, and it's not sure on that one yet.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Melissa?
With Michelle talking special ed, I thought that I would just give a little blurb about early ed special ed. And, thinking about, kiddos who end up in alternative programs or not, but need higher levels of support in K through 12, they often come through our preschool programs. And we don't have alternative programs, and that's by design for 3, 4s, and young 5s. We don't want them attending alternative programs, so that they're with their same age, typically developing peers. But what we've been able to do to create some programming is last year we contracted out with a BCBA, and this year we're able to access our own BCBAs and really match the level of support needed for each of the kiddos' needs. So I think at the start we were talking about early ed behavior technicians, and it really is a level of support that we've identified that some of our children need, and it's really great to be able to have it in-house and to be able to have that continuum of services throughout. And then, Morgan and I go around a little bit because we always have our incoming 3-year-olds where we rarely can anticipate the needs. So there's always some maybes, probably, but not always definites. But
in your budget planning.
Yeah,
yes,
Morgan loves that.
Yeah. Sorry, but. It's a work in progress, and I think we've seen some really great gains with our kiddos, and the skills and the rate that they're acquiring them is the growth is really fantastic at all levels of the continuum.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, I think that's everyone, because no burn tonight. Any agenda items or other discussion points from the board for tonight? Our next meeting will be Tuesday, December 16th here in the library. Any final words? Okay, I'll make a motion then to end the meeting. Akua? Sarah?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Thank you all so much, and I hope everyone has a really blessed Thanksgiving with your family and friends. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.